And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from a real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek, and this is episode 119. This is the Week 15 preview episode where I'm going to break down the upcoming game between the Bengals and the Ravens at Paycor Stadium. This is going to be the must-win game. So many times you hear reporters talk about asking athletes, is this a must-win game? And it seemed like since the beginning of the season, they've been asking the Bengals players, is this a must-win game? Because they were talking about needing to get off to the fast start. So even early in the season, it was a must-win game. Then they lost 3 games in a row, and they started asking, is it a must-win game? And so many times players have had to answer, yes, it's a must-win game. Yes, it's a must-win game. And some of them they won, some they didn't. But this game is a must-win game because they will be actually eliminated if they don't win this game. They're 4-9. They can't get to 10 losses. There's no real chance to get into the playoffs if they lose this one because Baltimore and Pittsburgh still have to play each other. If they lose to Baltimore, they're going to get to 7 wins. Pittsburgh is at 7-6. And then they have to play each other in the last game of the season. So somebody's going to get to 8 wins. There's no way for the Bengals to get to 8 wins if they lose. So got to win this game. It's not going to be easy. Not only is it a divisional rival, Lamar Jackson, Ravens, they're looking for revenge after Thanksgiving. But on top of that, Bengals are not going to have the services of Tee Higgins. And he was questionable whether or not he was going to play in this game, but wisely and thankfully, Tee Higgins is not going to play. I don't like to see Tee Higgins injured, but he's still dealing with the effects of that concussion that he was evaluated for multiple times against the Buffalo Bills. He was just coming off a concussion. And so Tee Higgins didn't play in that Thanksgiving game against the Ravens. This is going to be the second game against the Ravens, and neither one featured Tee Higgins for the Bengals, which you could say is good and bad. I mean, the Bengals, they won that matchup last time without Tee Higgins. And the thing was they had those 5 turnovers. Lamar Jackson probably isn't going to commit 2 fumbles and an interception. The Ravens aren't going to fumble the ball away. So the Bengals, I don't know if you could say it's going to be on their side, but the weather is going to be a factor in this game. The players try to say that it's not a factor, but the snow in Buffalo probably was a factor somewhat last week, and definitely in terms of the footing. This week, I don't think there's going to be any snow on the ground, but it is going to be bitterly cold. The weather forecast for Sunday in Cincinnati is supposed to be somewhere between 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit with winds between 10 to 15 miles an hour. So with the wind chill, it's going to be close to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Not feeling very good at all. And that's another reason, if I were Tee Higgins, I would be maybe not in such a hurry to be coming back for this game necessarily. It's going to be so cold. Tickets are advertised right now as low as $14 online. That's the lowest price I've ever seen for a Bengals home game. You can go for $14. I wouldn't recommend it unless you have very, good winter gear, because that is like dangerously cold weather. You shouldn't be outside in the elements when it's 0 degrees for multiple hours. So if you're going to the game, make sure you bundle up, take precautions. Don't want anybody losing any fingers and toes for the old team here. But the players, that's going to be something that most of them haven't experienced cold weather like that. And how are they going to be able to deal with that? They showed in the mic'd up segment from the Buffalo Bills. They had Jordan Battle, the safety. He was mic'd up. He was on the bench talking about how cold his toes were and how cold his feet were. And that just made me think about Joe Burrow, who's recovering from that toe injury. His toes are going to get cold, I'm sure, just like anybody who goes out in the cold weather like that. So what is Joe Burrow? How is his foot and his surgically repaired toe going to react to all this? Speaking of reactions and Joe Burrow, I'm going to hit on this very briefly, but there is a big, as Jamar Chase described it, a narrative in the media about how Joe Burrow doesn't love football anymore and Joe Burrow's going to retire and all this kind of stuff. Like tabloid type material about Joe Burrow. Every time Joe Burrow makes any kind of a statement to the media, so many people outside of Cincinnati who wish and kind of enviously wish they had Joe Burrow as their quarterback say, oh, Joe Burrow's not happy in Cincinnati. Maybe we can trade for him. And then, so you see all these stories about how, what the team could trade for Joe Burrow in New York or in all these other places that are looking for quarterbacks right now. We could get Joe Burrow on our team. Of course, that's what fans of the Bengals and people in Cincinnati are so afraid of. Joe Burrow might not be the quarterback and he might leave or he might retire early. So you hear all these people talking about, oh, he's going to be the next Andrew Luck. Oh, he's going to be the next Carson Palmer. He's going to be the next whatever. Joe Burrow is his own individual guy. He may have some kind of unorthodox method of leaving the Bengals, but we're never going to know what it's going to be. It's going to be something unique, just like Joe Burrow is unique. He's not going to do it like those other guys. He's going to do it his own way. So it may not be the fairy tale ending for Joe Burrow as a Bengal, but I can tell you it's not going to be anytime soon, most namely because the Bengals are never going to trade Joe Burrow away. He's the golden goose. And number two, because he's still under contract for 3 or 4 more seasons. He's not going anywhere. And if he did decide to retire early, he'd have to pay a bunch of money back because the Bengals aren't going to just be like the Colts and tell Andrew Luck, oh, hey, you can go ahead and retire. Don't worry about that extra $25 million signing bonus. You can just keep it as a show of good faith. No effing way are the Mike Brown and the Blackburn family going to let Joe Burrow just walk away with the rest of his retirement. They are coming for that signing bonus retroactively on Joe Burrow if he ever decided to retire. So there's millions of reasons for Joe Burrow not to retire, because if he did, namely, he would have to pay a bunch of money back to the Bengals, which he doesn't want to do. So I know he's got, lots of money, but he's still got lots of more money. And the fact that he said, if I'm going to continue to do this, I'm paraphrasing. He said, if I'm going to keep doing this, I have to be happy doing it. Otherwise, what's the point? But that's kind of a very immature, naive way of looking at your job. It would be nice if everybody had a job where they would love every single second of it and never have a down moment. But some people, for paychecks, have to go in, punch the clock, do their job, and even if it's not the most enjoyable thing in the world. So honestly, I don't really care. I know Joe Burrow is a human being. He's got a lot of complex issues going on in his life, and I don't know. I probably can't appreciate what it's like to be Joe Burrow or what kind of issues he's got going on. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals. I just want to see some guys go out there and play some football. So I don't really care if Joe Burrow is having that much fun or not. I think he's having fun. He looks like he's having fun. He's having enough fun to throw 4 touchdowns in the game. So, he would be having fun, obviously, if they were winning. That's the bottom line is they didn't get the win, so it's not as much fun. Like Jamar Chase said at the beginning of the season when they were losing a bunch, it's not fun when you're losing. So the thing that's going to cure everything for Joe Burrow is winning football games. Now, that's easier said than done because Joe Burrow knows that this Bengals team, this roster, isn't constructed in a way that is going to be able to help him get a lot of wins, namely on the defense. Yes, Joe Burrow had those 2 interceptions, but obviously on the pick 6, Joe Burrow couldn't tackle on that, but Joe Burrow can't play defense or tackle anybody. So when Josh Allen and the other team is running up and down the field, all of Joe Burrow's efforts kind of go not wasted. Everybody can see how talented Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense is. Mike Gesicki is probably going to have another big game in this matchup against the Ravens. Jamar Chase should have a good day, but Nate Wiggins is going to be back in. Nate Wiggins had to leave halfway through the last Ravens game with a foot injury. He should be playing in this one. It didn't sound like a serious injury. They're still going to have Marlon Humphrey. They're still going to have Chidobe Awuzie, who played for the Bengals in that last Super Bowl they went to. Obviously, the tight ends are going to be a big factor for both teams. The Bengals utilize their tight ends in Noah Fant, Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample, of course. But the Ravens also have Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar. Guys who can cause serious problems for these Bengals rookie linebackers. But last game against the Ravens, I thought the Bengals did a relatively good job of stopping the Ravens' running game. I think it was pretty much even. And it was maybe because the Ravens were trailing in the game that they couldn't run the ball. They had to throw more frequently. But the Ravens didn't try to lean on Derrick Henry as much as they probably could have. For whatever reason, they started off their first drive, had a long Derrick Henry run for a touchdown. Then I think they only ran like 8 times in the first half or something crazy like that. But I would expect to see the Ravens probably try to run the ball. I don't know what the status of the Ravens' offensive line is. Maybe they've got some injuries. They're not as good as they've been in years past. Lamar Jackson was looking a little bit more mobile last week in their loss to the Steelers in Baltimore. That was 2 home games in a row that the Ravens lost, something you don't normally see. Usually you have that home field advantage in the NFL. But hopefully the Bengals are able to get that. This is going to be another game on turf, though. Last week, the footing was a little bit soft, but it might have helped Joe Burrow if that toe was feeling a little bit stiff. And then the first game Joe Burrow came back, it was on natural grass in Baltimore. This is going to be the first game, if I'm thinking about this, this is the first home game for Joe Burrow since he has returned from that injury. And it's going to be interesting to see how many fans actually make the trip. If the tickets are going for as low as they are right now, I would not expect the stadium to be completely sold out. And that's going to be probably how it's going to be in a number of cities. Chicago, anywhere in the Northwest or Midwest where they're playing football this Sunday specifically is going to be super cold. So this is one of those arguments. I know people talk about, why do they build domes? This is why they build domes, because nobody wants to go sit outside for 3.5 hours when it's 0 degrees outside. But even though the Bengals are the home teams, the Ravens are favored by 2.5, 3 points, depends where you look. The over-under is 51.5, which is pretty high for an NFL game. But both of these defenses are pretty susceptible, especially the Bengals defense. They continue to be near the bottom of the league, but they've been looking a little bit better. I would say the Bengals offense is looking like one of the top 10 offenses in the NFL. Now, they're not going to have Tee Higgins, who makes them look a lot better, but even without that, they've been able to run the football pretty effectively. The offensive line has been doing a much better job. They have, knock on wood, haven't had to deal with too many injuries in the offensive line, and Dalton Reisner has continued to play well. So I think the Bengals can continue to put up points. It's just going to come down to how well are they able to stop the Ravens. And again, maybe it's going to come down to a special teams play, a turnover, interception, fumble, whatever it could be. This is going to be another close game. Both of these two teams, they know each other very well, obviously. They played each other. The Bengals, on the scoreboard, it looked like the Bengals kind of blew the Ravens away last time, but it was more just a factor of those 5 turnovers that really swung the tide way in the Bengals' favor. This time, I think it's going to be a little bit closer. But the Ravens should be pretty healthy. They don't have really anybody. They have a few guys who are questionable, who are coming back off of injured reserve. So depending on how they are feeling, some guys like Ardarius Washington and Tavius Robinson, a linebacker and a safety, they could come back for the Ravens, but nobody else really listed for the Ravens as being out for this game. Now, Shamar Stewart has been on injured reserve with a knee injury. Apparently, it was some kind of a torn ligament, Ben Baby said. I don't know if they didn't say the ligament. You get very few specifics on what these guys' injuries actually are, especially during the season. It might come out after the season, but Shamar Stewart is doubtful to play in this game. Bengals first-round draft pick. He's only been active for a handful of games, hasn't really done much. P.J. Jules, safety for the Bengals, and also plays a lot on special teams. He is doubtful with an ankle injury he suffered in last week's game. He did not practice at all this week. Shaka Hayward, linebacker, is going to be coming off of injured reserve. He's been dealing with a fractured fibula, but he's going to be back. That should help, hopefully, solidify the linebacker depth, which has been pretty thin. And, those two rookies have not been playing especially well. Oren Burks hasn't been playing that much better than either one of them. So they need some help at linebacker desperately. This game is going to be on CBS, and this may not be a good thing. This is going to be another game called by Spiro Dedes, Adam Archuleta on the call, and Aditi Kinkhabwala on the sidelines. Now, if those names sound familiar, it's because they have already called 2 games so far this season for the Bengals. The previous 2 games they called in a row were that Jets loss and that Bears loss, both of which the Bengals lost in heartbreaking fashion. So hopefully it is not another game like that with Spiro and Arch on the call, but it's not a good sign. But like I said, history doesn't always repeat itself. We'll just have to go into this with an open mind. But I'm going to predict this is going to be kind of a lower scoring game than you expect. Just because cold, it's not going to be a great day for throwing. These guys are going to be super stiff, not really wanting to do much of anything. So if I had to make a prediction, I would say I think the Bengals, for whatever reason, they might actually win this game. Against my better judgment, I might predict a Bengals upset. Let's say it feels like a 24-20, something like that. Maybe 24-21, 24-20, somewhere in there. A field goal, a one-possession game, low 20s. That feels about where it's going to be. I feel like the Bengals, with Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, Chase Brown, on top of having a healthy Joe Burrow and a good offensive line, they're going to score points. But, of course, the defense isn't that good, so they're going to give up points. But I don't think the Ravens are really that good this year either. So it's possible. It could happen. Let's be optimistic for once, and let's predict a Bengals victory. But you know what? If they don't get a win, it will kind of be a relief in a way, because we've been going through this every season of, if they could just win all the games remaining at the end of the season, they might have a chance. And, it's just, that's very stressful. So it might be less stressful if they just get eliminated this week and get it over with, but I'm not going to hope for that. I'm going to hope for a Bengals win, obviously. But that'll be one less thing to worry about. And like I said, if you're concerned about Joe Burrow, don't be. Because think about, if you think Joe Burrow is going to just walk away from football anytime soon, he's already in the same quarterback room with 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And, he's over a decade older than Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow wants to be playing just like Joe Flacco. People who love football, I'm sure they have something in common. Joe Burrow is going to look at that. He's going to look at guys like Phillip Rivers, who's coming out of being retired for 5 years to play for the Indianapolis Colts. There's guys who would do anything to be playing in the NFL. And this is what Joe Burrow loves to do, even if he doesn't, enjoy it as much when he's losing. You can't play Josh Allen every week. So if he had been playing any other quarterback, he would have won last week, but he's just, he got that sour taste in his mouth, and that's almost a good thing, because you don't want a guy to be like happy with himself after a loss. That's the way you want a competitive player like Joe Burrow to react. And so I wouldn't read too far into Joe Burrow being emotional and vulnerable in front of the cameras. It was a little bit odd, just the way he dealt with everything and talked about how he's got a lot of stuff going on and all of the above, when they asked him like what was kind of on his mind. Who knows? He's got a hot model girlfriend. Who knows what could be going on with his personal life? We've seen in college football, all kinds of stuff could be going on behind the scenes in people's personal lives who are head coaches for teams up north. But that's all rumors and speculation. We won't get into that on this podcast. But these are the things that make watching NFL and following the game so much fun, is because there's so many things that people can talk about. Unfortunately, they don't have enough to talk about inside the game. We have to talk about all this other stuff outside the game. I'm more interested in what's going on Sunday. So I'll be watching. The game won't be blacked out in my area. I won't have to worry about having to watch a Browns game. The Browns game is going to be on Fox or whatever. So this is going to be on CBS in my local area. I can watch it from the comfort of the warmth inside my own home, which is going to be great. But that's going to do it for this preview episode. Thank you so much for listening. Tell me what you think in the comments. Are the Bengals going to win? Are they going to win out? Are they going to make it to the playoffs? Or is it going to be a loss and a relief to get this elimination over with? So don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, do all the stuff. I'll catch you on the next episode while we recap what happens in this Ravens must-win game. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.